Thank you all for coming to my PLC. This is going to be a quick overview over Do the Math. I'm going to explain why I'm doing that in my classroom, and as well as go over kind of the results of how well it's working so far. So the table of contents, we're going to go over the agenda, which I emailed to you. We're going over the overview, and these are just a list of the slides. So we'll go over how it's implemented, how it's used, the results, how it's working in my classroom, and then you get to kind of dig in and see it for yourself. Okay, the vision statement of my classroom is that we're going to push ourselves to become creative, responsible workers by working hard, challenging themselves, and being respectful to each teacher and fellow classmates. All of the math practices, the biggest one is that they can make sense and not give up. So the biggest thing with my kids is that they're not going to be able to just stop and say they don't get it. And so that's another big thing with Do the Math is these are kids that are already struggling. So since they're already struggling, this is going to give them a way to not be able to give up. So my introduction on what we're doing, PowerPoint, discussion of the intervention article, digging in, we're going to talk about next steps, and then you're going to do a quick reflection for me on your thoughts. Okay, this year, 2 of you are new, but last year we had a math interventionist. This year they didn't have funds to do so. So we just have Ellen as the reading specialist. We don't have anybody to do math intervention. So now, as a first-time math teacher, now I have to do intervention too. So luckily the school has given us the Do the Math program by Marilyn Burns. We'll go over that later. It's going to be able to develop understanding, reason, reflect, and practice. The kids are going to be able to really hone in on what they're struggling with and fill in the gaps that they have. And hopefully the program will then build on itself and they can move forward. Do the Math is an intervention program by Marilyn Burns. It's a comprehensive teacher support and high quality instruction. It has to be very intensive. We'll go over that again too. Every day it has to be the same thing. Rotations, each thing. And once they get in a lesson, they have to finish the entire lesson to its entirety before they can move on. Or they're still going to have the gaps that they had. They're going to get the number sense they need to reason, the ability to then apply the number sense that they're getting, and then their ability to reason to solve the problems, to actually get problems that use those problems that they're having to just use number sense for. Okay. Implementation of Do the Math, they're very small group settings. I only have 18 in the morning, I have 17 kids in the afternoon, but a group can be as low as 4 people in a group because there's multiple books. And on the back shelf, there's all of the different books. There's the multiplication and division, there's addition and subtraction, fractions, and there's 3 books for each. So I could have a group that's working on addition, but they could be in 3 separately different books, and you'll be able to look at that later. It also can be whole group. So even though my whole group might be in 3 different books of addition and subtraction, I can do a whole group setting with them at my back table, and they can still benefit from that. Again, must remain consistent. They're 30-minute classes, which luckily our RTI system, which Renee knows, is at least 50. I mean, we almost have a full hour with them. So I can even double dip and do more than 1 lesson a day, which allows them to speed through it a lot faster so they're not getting farther behind in the actual classroom setting. And then my classroom setup, they will do a pre-test, then they'll do stations. They have a small group with me where we go over the test, misconceptions that they did. They have a group where they play games, and it's all hands-on visual representations. Then they go to the computer, they do an online MobyMax activity, and then they finish up with a workbook activity. And again, you'll get to see the workbooks. The instructional strategies, it's scaffolded, it's completely explicit to what they're doing at their level. There's multiple strategies, there's multiple tools they can put their hands on and use, and it's fun. They're not just sitting in class listening to me teach it to them. They're actually touching and feeling and moving and getting up and doing games and collaboratively working with people. That's the student interaction, it's meaningful, and then those student interactions allow for the vocabulary and language, and then it's always differentiated. It's a very strict structure to each individual learner. So, generic results, this was shown online at this website. You're really welcome to get it. I can email it to you when you get the presentation. But this shows that students made a significant improvement on their SMI testing. All the math kids started with the SMI quantile range. Those that worked with Do the Math went higher. Those that didn't grow as much. I think that's really due to its explicit, very specific instruction. Again, the same thing, if they were doing the math better than their counterparts on showing growth, and then teachers and administrators overwhelmingly agree that it's improving their student confidence. I've talked with Morgan in 2nd grade, I've talked with Emily in 3rd, I've talked with 5th grade teachers. Just working all together, I think overall the kids are really feeling like they're filling in those gaps. and they're not as lost as I think they were at the beginning. And I even asked my kids today, like, what do you think about it? And they're like, I don't feel near as confused. Like, I feel like I can actually get some problems done. It's helped me in my regular classroom. And I can really see that with my kids that I have in RTI. They're able to do so much better in classwork because they're starting to fill in those missing gaps. So the next one should be what others think. I got an article it's a peer-reviewed article from the National Center of Education Evaluation and Regional Assistance. It's from the U.S. Department of Ed. And what it's about is that what is needed in RTI to make it truly effective. Well, here's their big parts. They have to do screening to see if they're at risk. That's what our SMI is. We did that. We see which ones are needing the extra help. We provide it with all the materials. My whole back shelf is all the materials that they need. Instruction should be explicit and systematic. You just saw on all that data information, it is explicit and it is systematic. Word problems are embedded. Numerous opportunities for visual representation. They can draw, they can write, they can use manipulatives. Fluency practices every day. Eureka Math is what I'm doing in my overall classroom. It's fluency kind of every day. This also has fluency skills embedded. And then progress monitoring must take place. That's school-wide and district-wide. You have to monitor the kids to show, are they making progress, how much are they making, and is it making a true positive impact on the kids. So again, I have that emailed, but you can look at that article as well. So, specific results. I gave it the first time based on just their SMI. Well, right away, watching it how they act in class compared to that score was not even close to what it should have been. Some of the kids were showing they were barely learning when they should have easily been at least in the first book. So I went solely on that. Well, obviously their growth wasn't near as substantial as I thought, which is here. They scored really, really high, which it's too easy. They already knew that information. So I went back to the drawing board. So after collecting and analyzing it, it was too easy. So then I went to Jennifer and I said, what do I do? Like, what score do they need to make to be able to know that's the book to start on? And so we came together and said, if it's 80 or above, it's basically mastered. I mean, that's only missing a couple of questions. Proficient is 70 to 89. So even if they're missing, some and they're getting a 70, depending on what they missed, they might be able to move on. So at that point, it's kind of teacher discretion. Do you think they're missing key things that they don't need to move on without? Or is it just a simple error that they can just quickly fix and move on? So once I talked to her, I decided that I gave them a new beginning of the module for the next book. So for example, I just did 6 students. These are the same 6 that I had on the previous one where they were getting like 90s on the pretest. So it's the same 6 kids. They were getting in the 80s and 90s, high 80s. This one was mid 70s, 80s, low 70s. When I gave them their new book, they scored 65, 55%, 55, 65, 65, and 60. So I knew at that point that book's too difficult for them. This is where I need to start. They're missing something from this book, so that's the book I started them on. Thanks to this, there was a huge improvement. Once they went through all of the groups, they did their computer work, they did small group with me, and they did their independent workbook work. They gained huge confidence and were thrilled with the results. Again, I went back to it, even if there were commonly missed questions. Even though they did a really well improvement, if they still, that group missed the same questions, we went over it. This is the difference between their pre and their post. So blue is how they did afterwards, red's where they started. So I had kids jump 20-something points. So obviously something in the program's working right. Now, I didn't jump around, started from the beginning, made it all the way through the lesson, and then gave them the post test. So obviously you can see that that was where they needed to start, and they got a lot out of it. So the first thing I'm going to give you is these are just the workbooks that the kids work in, and I'm going to show you how it's scaffolded. There's A, B, and C, and it's just addition and subtraction. So just look at what A starts them out as doing, and then check B and C and just see how it goes from there. Once they get through with the first one, and there it's got the games in there, it's got the lessons, it's got the whole group. So A is literally just base 10 blocks, like being able to do a base 10 figure. Then you get into B and you're getting into 2-digit by 2-digit. By C, you're being able to regroup and borrow. And a lot of our kids are missing those gaps, which is why they're struggling with multiplication and division. It's why they're struggling with when we're trying to add bigger numbers. They don't have the easy concept of borrowing. They can't do it straight across. And borrowing 10 has been a big thing with subtraction. And then this is just kind of a game. This is for the higher level, but there's like a pathways multiplication game that you can pass around. There's the tile capture where they have to do multiplication facts. I also have the lines and crosses where they have to use in-depth thinking to see horizontal and vertical. So that's just some of the games that they play in their groups. Do we have any questions about that? But it's easily, you can see how one just feeds itself into the other. And if you don't pass it with A, then you're not going to be ready for B. So a lot of my kids were passing A, but they needed the extra work of B. And then the plastic containers just have online access, just to be able to print stuff off. I just have them do it on their own paper to turn it in so I can see their work and see where their misconceptions are. Okay, so my next steps, based on the data, the kids are ready to move on. They've gotten that, they've moved on, they're in the 80s to 90%. We're going to move on. They made dramatic increases due to the intentional implementation of the daily practice. So now they got their beginning of the module of whatever next book they're on. They take that pre-test. I again document their score and they're ready for the next unit of instruction. So lastly, I just need you to do 3 things that you learned about Do the Math that you didn't know already. 2 things that you might still have about it, and then 1 thing that I could have done differently to make it more beneficial to you. So, you can do that. That would be great, and I have a paper for you. You just bulleted quick. Does anybody have any questions? But last year they focused on reading a lot, and so I think this will really help the kids that are just on the line of going from apprentice to proficient. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.